Ah, New York City, home to many cultures, classes, and dreams, but most importantly, Sex and the City. I had actually never watched Sex and the City until this year at the age of 22, and I feel like this is a good age to actually watch Sex and the City, and I'm glad to have been born in this era, because I mean, even though I just started watching, I watched all the seasons and the movies, okay? So I feel like I'm very, very equipped with knowledge on the show for me to form this opinion. But there are some issues, with the show. But that's what we're here to talk about today. First things first, the show is iconic. The fashion, the people, the casual fabulousness of it all. It kind of makes, young women want to go to New York and move there and to just have it all come so easy. But like every show, there are some problems. And I wanted to make this video because I had kind of sort of closed my chapter on Sex and the City and in terms of watching the shows and the movies, but I've recently kind of came back into contact with certain discussions about decentering men and feminism and kind of what the current state is and where women are at with our relationships with men. And one thing that's come up a lot in videos or in the comment sections are older women being one thing that they wished was happening 10-20 years ago was the current discussions about decentering men instead of Sex in the City. And again, don't get me wrong, Sex in the City, it's iconic, the fashion amazing, but Sex in the City isn't actually the main point to this video, but it's a huge marker / catalyst for what's going on right now in Western feminism. And the main point of this video is really to talk about decentering men and what that means to me. But first, we got to get into the characters, the show, and why there's even a correlation between Sex and the City and the discussions that we're having now. Basically, the show is about these 4 friends, these 4 older women, and how they're navigating life in the city, love in the city, and sex. And one thing that I do like about the show is that all 4 of these women are very successful. They all have careers. They all make a pretty substantial amount of money, except for Carrie at one point. She was broke, and when that happened, I was just how are you broke? What are we doing? You're spending $4,000 on shoes and you're broke? Stop that. Stop it. Because every time Carrie was on screen, she was wearing something iconic. She was wearing high heels with diamonds, okay, embellished. Stop. There's no way. I'm sorry. Next, let's move on. And one of the main things that they're constantly navigating are kind of society's expectations of them and how they internalize that. And Carrie writes about this a lot in her column for one of the New York papers. And I think this is another thing that I also really like about the show is how this friend group, they're all personality wise and even lifestyle wise, they're all very drastically, maybe not super drastically, but they're pretty different from each other. So they take on these expectations and stereotypes differently. For example, Charlotte feels like she will literally die, she will explode if she doesn't get married and have a baby. even though she literally has so many other things. Like the show just like baffles me. It baffles me. Like, I think that's the thing that kind of like where I'm gonna say it failed me, is like they all fell into the same bullshit that they complained about and like were dragging other women about, you know? It was like that. I didn't like that. I was like, what? Like, you know, it's fine for life to change and for you to change your mind, but it was as if there wasn't like a true character change where there was something that like changed within them, that gave them that security, that gave them that sense of who they were. It still was like attached to a man. And I was just like, what is like the point of this, you know, series? I don't well, anyway, I kind of just want to get into the characters a little bit and kind of like what I think is just like why they kind of suck. Which is okay, you know, characters are supposed to suck and, you know, be redeemable, have some redeemable qualities. But of course, let's start with none other than Miss Carrie Bradshaw. Carrie is desperate. Even though she's kind of like cool girl about it, she's still pretty desperate, you know, especially with the whole big thing. That was insane to me. And then for her to go back and then like try and marry this man and he doesn't even show up to the altar, and then she still takes him back and marries him even though she literally has like the worst breakdown ever, is absolutely insane to me. Because like, that's not love. I'm sorry, but for me, that's not what love is. I don't know, maybe that's what it is for Carrie, but that's not what it is for me. And then for them to like be married, and then he's kind of just like in this little area of just like settling, and she's like, she kind of wants like more out of him. Like, she has always wanted more out of this man and like just kept chasing after this man, and then when she stopped, of course he wants to go after her. Like, that is not love. That is a toxic dynamic. And there's another thing on here that I didn't put, but like a lot of Carrie's issues and problems are caused by her. Like, she instigates a lot of fights. She's a bit of a pick-me, just a little bit. I can fairly say that like all of them are, except for Samantha, are kind of pick-me's to some extent, but it's not like terrible where it's like they start coming for the other woman. Like, there was at least that they did uphold some kind of girl code, which I was okay with. The pick-me-ness was subtle, a bit more subtle. Carrie is indecisive. She doesn't know what she wants. She just thinks she knows what it's supposed to feel like, and like what she needs is supposed to feel like. And yeah, she doesn't fully know what she wants, because she doesn't like let things kind of just simmer and like just experience things. She wants to go all in for it, and then when it doesn't happen, she kind of like turns around and acts like it's okay when it's really not okay. Like, you can tell for her it's not okay for her. She's a little all over the place. She's careless. She's pretty careless. I mean, to some extent all of them are, except for like Miranda. And I wouldn't say Charlotte's super careless, but I think what makes me say this the most is the fact that she just left her freaking passport in some random market in the Middle East. Like, what are we doing? You're like in your 40s now. I'm not saying people can't make mistakes, but they're literally just, they were so careless in that movie. That movie made me so mad at certain points. But next is Carrie is also a very bad communicator, and to some extent they all are. All of them are, actually. And there's gonna be a lot of, you know, repeating character flaws for all of them. But that is my assessment of Carrie Bradshaw's, you know, worst flaws. Next up, we have Miranda, and Miranda is a successful lawyer. So to some extent, I kind of saw myself in her, like the ambition, the drive. She doesn't want to give up on her career, but I also feel like she takes it a bit to an extreme. So these are, you know, kind of like these are the worst character flaws for Miranda for me. Is like, she's also somewhat desperate, but she's not like Carrie desperate. Well, she'll like go begging, you know, like she has her pride. She has her reservations. She's also indecisive because she couldn't decide whether she wanted to love Steve or not, which was ridiculous to me. She's also a bit of a pick-me, just a little bit. She definitely likes to shit talk other women, and that's something that I don't like about Miranda. It's like, okay, cool, you're insecure, just acknowledge that, but what does the other girl have to do with anything, especially if she didn't do anything to you personally? Miranda is a bad communicator. Like I said, she was very indecisive on whether she wanted Steve or not, and her communication skills were just absolutely terrible. Like, she would just tear him down. For what? Next, she's very anal retentive, and because of that, I think she's very judgmental, kind of lacks a bit of empathy, and she definitely projects. She projects a lot of whatever is going on internally with her onto other people, and she's done that a lot on her own friends' relationships. She's projected onto their relationships, and how that's just caused that to cascade into an even bigger mess. But I mean, a lot of these qualities also kind of make sense because it's like, she's a lawyer, so, you know, I'm not saying like that's inherent to people who are lawyers, because I want to be a lawyer, and I hope to God I'm not like this. If I am, please let me know. Jesus. So next we have Charlotte, and I absolutely adore Charlotte. She's so cute. She's a little whiny, but it's like, it's bearable, you know. But I think Charlotte is also desperate. She's very desperate to get married and have kids, to be just picture perfect, like cookie cutter. Like, okay, we're getting married, I need the ring, I need the big wedding, I need it to be broadcasted into magazines and newspapers all over New York. Charlotte is chasing after an image. So yeah, she's desperate, but in a classier way than the other ladies. She's also a bit judgmental because she does choose to like navigate her relationships and her sex life and her values very differently than the other ladies. Another thing is, like, Charlotte changes herself for a man, and she does it like quite a few times throughout the series. And I think the thing that like got me, which was like, it was also kind of sweet that she changed her religion for her husband Harry, but it was also just like, what? But at that point you kind of knew that like Harry was the one, so it's kind of like you just ate it, like they gave it to you and you just took it, you know, as a viewer. And you weren't mad about it, but then you're also just like, at least looking back on it, especially her previous marriage, like, she changed herself quite a bit, you know. Like, Charlotte knows how to play the role. She knows how to play a role, and if she is not in that role, she freaks out. And she thinks it's the end of the world if she does not get married. And I think that's also something like about this show that's Like I said before, all 4 of these women are extremely successful. Like, they got money, they got the status, they have the resources, they know the people. It's kind of insulting to like boil these women down to them only finding their fulfillment once there was a man, you know, in their lives. And it was kind of just like, what the heck? Like, and I think it's such a false portrayal also about how women exist outside of men and within other circles of women, you know. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm speaking from my generation standpoint, where I'm just like, this isn't like realistic anymore, you know. This isn't like, I haven't been in a friend group like this since middle school, and even then it was still so different. Anyway, next we have the iconic, the legendary Samantha. And honestly, I don't have a lot of complaints about Samantha. I feel like Samantha was definitely ahead of her time. Samantha knew what she wanted. Samantha was a good communicator because she was blunt and just gave it to you that that is what it is, you know. Yeah, I feel like other than what she did in like the Middle East in the second movie, I'm okay with Samantha. I don't really see myself in Samantha, but I have absolute like respect and admiration for just like how open she is. But then that also leaves her very emotionally guarded, and like I said, she's a bit reckless, especially what she did in the second movie in the Middle East. Like, okay, I get it, you're a very sexually liberated woman, but babes, you're in a different country. Like and then that scene towards the end where they're like leaving the market in the Middle East, and then she drops her bag, or like, no, she didn't drop it, but they were tugging at her bag, and then the bag fell and a whole bunch of condoms and stuff came out, and all these men began to come around her and like form a circle around her and just begin like cursing and berating her, and like they're going off in Arabic and whatnot, and Samantha just does the most Samantha thing she can do, and she tells him, she's like, yeah, I like sex, I like this, I like that, deal with it. Like it was like reckless because of the context of like, okay, you're in a different country, like you can't be acting like that, but then it's also just kind of like, that's Samantha. Like she will not succumb to your shaming because she's not ashamed. So as open as Samantha is about being sexual, she's very emotionally guarded. Like she refuses to call anyone her boyfriend. Like saying I love you, love is just out of the question for her. It's purely pleasure, purely sex all the time. And with that, I think she also lacked a bit of empathy when it came to supporting her friends in their situations, but it was like in a funny way, you know. She wasn't like a complete total bitch, but like she was just Samantha. Like, if you know, you know. There's no other way to describe it. So like I had stated before, this video isn't exactly about Sex in the City, but how it's kind of influenced a lot of what's happening today. And another thing that I did appreciate to an extent about the show was their sisterhood, but even then it was just tarnished by like them shaming each other, and it's just portrayed as like a normal thing that women do, and I disagree with that. And I think many women would disagree with that, not with the fact that this behavior exists, but with the fact that this behavior is like inherent to female friendship. So I think shows like this created a lot of expectations and bad examples for women today, especially like older women. Like, I'm not super old, but like millennials, I would say, because they're the ones at least from like what I'm seeing, like really driving the conversation for us, like Gen Z women, on like decentering men and like them thinking like if they just stuck through it, if they had the loyalty, if they just went through the pain, you know, they traveled across the country for him, you know, he would make them the one. They would finally get the ring that was promised, the cookie cutter home, you know, just be surrounded by warmth and love. And a lot of them have been met with disappointment. And I think that we can kind of tie that experience to Carrie moving to France. I don't remember the name of her artist boyfriend, but he was pretty significantly older than her. And I'm not gonna lie, it kind of had me fooled, like slightly, where I was kind of just like, okay, I know for a fact Carrie is gonna end up returning back to New York, but I also feel like France could be the opportunity for her to actually like experience a new side of herself, a side of herself that was more whole, and where she would actually like be wrapped in love like she wanted. And you know, she would kind of just like in some way like reinvent herself, and that didn't happen for her. And I was disappointed with her, and she got physically abused. Like, are you joking? And then Big came back and of course swooped in like a hero. Before Carrie could just get the chance to just take a break and kind of just live with herself, Big just swoops in, and it's a mess all over again, and it's a chase all over again. It's insane. It's like he could just sense that she was just moving on. She was gonna move on with regardless of him, and she let him know that too. And he still came. That made him come after her even more. He flew to a different nation, and yet was still a scumbag in the end. Like, absolutely insane. That man is insane and needs therapy. So does Carrie. So personally, and I'm kind of glad to say this, but like, I don't think I've ever like had a man be at the center in my life, even like from a young age, like in elementary school, middle school, high school. Like, I never really dated. I wasn't interested in dating, you know. I wasn't like sexually confused, but I had no interest in boys. Like, I focused on my studies. I read a lot of books, and at the time, that is where I got my fulfillment and attention from, you know, because it wasn't men. Even though I had been through a lot of like rocky stuff growing up and like a lot of crappy stuff with my dad, like my dad set a pretty high standard, you know. Even though your father's usually the one to break your heart first, he would still make an effort to like set the bar high. So it's like I had that male attention and like love through my dad, so I wasn't really seeking that in other places. Also, my mom wasn't like someone who would be seeking after male attention. Not to say that like people's moms did that in front of them and that's why they do it now. That might be true to some extent, but definitely like not for everyone. That's not like a general thing. But I can also say like I got a lot of like, I guess like modesty in a way, but not necessarily like modesty from my mom. I hope you get what I mean. But yeah, I can say like I've never had a man at the center of my life. I've never let a man drag me down to a point where it's like I had to kind of circumvent like my whole life and just like refigure everything out, like plan everything out. And I think that allowed me to go through a lot of other things in life. Like, yeah, I've had the boyfriends, I've had the heartbreak, like that stuff absolutely sucks. It sucks. But because it was kind of just like, well, I didn't like Not that I didn't I don't value men or like I hate men, because I don't, but it was also just like, I know that there's more out there other than this man. So it was very easy for me to kind of just like turn around and heal on my own and keep going, you know, because I had a view of what was out there outside of relationships and the other forms of relationships that are super important in cultivating, which is something that we don't talk about as a culture anymore. How much friendships are important, whether you're male or female, and how much sisterhood and female friendship is so important. And I'm glad to say that that's something I was able to experience because I didn't center men at any point in my life. And I have a boyfriend now, so it's like, even now, it's like, he isn't centered. But I'm gonna get more into that and into kind of our relationship a little bit. But yeah, like I said, I feel like the fact that I haven't centered men, it's allowed me to experience a lot of things in life. You know, like, I have my own assets right now. I've moved out of the country. I've lived alone, you know, in a different country for certain periods. I've had so many different roommates. I've learned a whole different culture. I've had the amazing job opportunities and career upgrades. You know, nothing like super crazy, but it's also still quite a bit for someone at 22, only at 22. So I know that like my frontal lobe isn't fully developed yet, and I still have a lot more life to go and a lot more to learn, but I also feel like a lot of the experience that I've been given is just like, it's priceless, you know, for me. And I can't imagine like spending that time harping over a man when in that time I learned so much. I grew up so much. I went through a lot of bullshit at the same time, you know, with other females, with other things going on in life, even with like men at certain points. But to that, like, that has a cap, that has a capacity. Like, at a certain point, not putting my energy into that, you know. And I think that also has a lot to do with like my intentions in dating, because hookup culture isn't for me. I don't care if you do it. Personally, I know I'm not built for it. Secondly, I date to marry. And so if I'm gonna be dating to marry in a culture like this, I better be okay with being alone with myself. And I was okay with that. I was very okay with like being alone with myself, because I wasn't really alone. I fed into my other relationships. I created a better relationship with my mom, a better relationship with my female friends, a better relationship with my brother and my dad. So yeah, I mean, I just can't imagine like, I mean, I'm still in my early 20s, but like me in my late teens to like being 21 harping over a guy, and like how much different my life would have been if like I were following a guy around, or like, I don't want to be too stereotypical, but it'd be absolutely crazy for me to imagine that. And I think that's why right now the relationship that I'm in, it works really well, because it's like, okay, I have a boyfriend, I do love him, I do see us, you know, becoming very serious and eventually like heading towards marriage, but he knows what time I'm on. He knows I got the degrees. He knows what I'm after. He knows law school is the next thing for me. He knows what I'm trying to start for myself, because I came with that energy and I told him what it was like from the beginning. Not only did that, like, he was like, okay, I really like that, but he didn't take away from me. Instead, he added to me. It wasn't like him trying to be in like competition with me, which I've had boyfriends do. Him like trying to knock me down a peg. It's always been, how can I help you? Go for it. Just tell me when, you know, like absolutely nothing but support. And I feel like because of the fact that I haven't like centered men in my life, it attracted him and like the kind of man that he is. And him also knowing that like, okay, yes, she loves me, she wants to be with me, hopefully we'll get married. Him also knowing like, okay, she's like on a mission, and like, 1, I better not F up. 2, I better not hold her back. And 3, how do I like add to her? And like he knows. It's just like, it's such a, I don't know how to explain it, but it's a really like healthy and good partnership. And I think moreover, like on top of it is like, I know how to take care of myself, he knows how to take care of himself, so we work it out and we take care of each other whilst not giving away too much of ourselves. Does that make sense? I'll let you know one day when I figure out how to properly articulate myself. But I think we mesh really well. And I'm also the same way with him. I'm like, okay, he has his goals, he has his dream, he has his plan. Like, how can I help you? Like, what do you need me to do? You know? And I think it's because he also gives. Like, we're both in like a constant state of just giving, you know? And it's not transactional. It's just purely like, you're my person, don't worry about it. You know, I want to help you, I want to give, I want to just fully be there with you and see you succeed. So that's where I'm at with it. And he knows that like, whether he's here or not, I'm gonna be on the same path, you know? He knows that. I think that's also kind of just why he's like, how can I add to her life? But yeah, that's just a little bit about me and what like decentering men looks like for me. It looks like making sure that I have space cultivated for myself, a whole lot of space, a majority of the space cultivated for myself and for my dreams and for my aspirations. It looks like having peace that is also cultivated from myself, happiness and joy cultivated from within myself. It looks completely internal, and it looks like healing. It looks like going to a museum and taking a workshop class and just learning how to do something and be at peace, and to just do something tedious. It looks like going to get my nails and my hair done and pampering myself. It looks like going after my education and going after my dreams and planning how I'm going to get there. It looks like getting together with girlfriends, not talking about men and talking about other things in life, you know, finding different ways to bond with them as well. That's what decentering men looks like. And decentering men doesn't mean that like you can't be in a relationship with a man, but be aware that if you are trying to find yourself and get right with yourself, that man better understand the time that you're on, right? He needs to understand the time that you're on. He needs to understand that he's not going to be the main character. Okay? And it's not like you're going to be like a huge main character in his life, you know, like you're just the main character within your own life. You're within your own lane. You're not gonna let anything stop you or put you in a different direction or delay you from what you're meant for. And I think like with developing this mindset and also kind of just like I said, cultivating my relationship with my female friends and building a better relationship with older women, especially like older Black women, it's been very like transforming for me, for sure. And it's kind of why like I've started to distance myself a bit from a certain type of girl my age, and this type of girl isn't necessarily like boy crazy, but this type of girl has no backbone in her relationship. Like, she's constantly coming to me with relationship issues, constantly crying over this man. This man's constantly disrespecting her privately and publicly, just has no regard for her, constantly in arguments with her, and like she just sees it as a game. Or like she doesn't see that she could just get up and leave, you know? Like there's no vision of her being fully independent without that man. And I don't think women and girls like that realize how much that impacts their other friendships, or maybe the lack thereof, because a lot of them get into relationships to avoid actually like making friends, especially female friends. And women like me, for example, who have never been like boy crazy, have never centered men, kind of become like their go-to girl, where they can like just vent and hate on other women. And it's like, well, no, I don't hate on other women. I just also like don't center men, and because of that you see me as a non-threat, and you see me as someone who might play into your bullshit. Well, this is not happening anymore. You know, it's always the friends of ours that like have so much potential, and if they like redirected their energy from a man into themselves, like they would be a force. But they don't know who they are without the male gaze. They've never been alone, always have a man in their life to some capacity. They don't know who they are, and facing who they are makes them super uncomfortable. Being alone with themselves is super uncomfortable, and that's one thing I want to kind of see in my friends, because that's something I have within myself. And it's like, not that I wouldn't support myself, my friends, but you need to have something within you where it's like, I'm okay with being alone with myself. I'm okay with sitting down right now with myself and digging a little deeper into myself and finding myself. I'm okay, and I enjoy being alone with myself, because that to me, it's like you can get up and start over and like just survive nearly anything. That's what that looks like to me. That's what that says to me, because that's what I feel like that says about myself, you know? And it's okay to enjoy yourself. But not only do like these types of girls and women, like they don't have like respect for themselves, but they absolutely hate other women, and they need other women to be beneath them. They need to be chosen, even if that means disrespect, even if that means having mental breaks, even if that means enduring abuse. She has to be the one on top. She has to be seen, and to make it known that there are no other girls out there like her. Almost as though she's not human like the rest of us. A privilege that she not only takes away from herself, but from other women. Dehumanizing not only other women, but herself. And her vitriol for other women, it's a guise of fear. She fears other women because should she actually give one a chance at sisterhood, she may find that in many ways she is just like them. Succumbing to the reason behind her disdain, she fears that should she be like the rest, she doesn't have any value, she won't be loved, she won't be seen or wanted, and the scared, ignored, invaded, and unprotected little girl that became an anxious, haughty woman must be dealt with. And that is not the fault nor the plight of other women. There's no excuse, there's no escape through the avenue of hating other women that once catered to her. And though she may not have put herself there, the accountability of digging herself out is on her. So that's kind of just one aspect of decentering men and what that process has looked like for me, and kind of like letting go of those friendships where it's like I'm gonna need you to be on a bit of a higher mindset. Let's think outside of men and our situations with men for once, you know. Let's talk about what we want to be, who we want to be, where we want to go. Let's talk about the money we want to make. Let's talk about how we're going to change things in our community. I think another thing about decentering men, and at least coming from my position where it's like there was never a man that I centered, a lot of men will see you as a challenge. They'll see you as, well, first they'll put you on the pedestal. You're mysterious, you're different, when really you're just living your life. You're a human, you know. You're kind of just like going through life. You see the bright side, you see all the possibilities outside of, you know, relationships. You see all that's out there. Maybe if you're like me, you see there's a greater connection, you know. I'm talking about God. But so they see you as mysterious, you're different, and that's when they begin to see you as like a conquest. And it's like, you're something I have to figure out, you're something I have to understand. You know, for some men it's kind of like, what's the secret, like what's behind the veil when there is no longer a veil, you know, because that's something that I worked on and something that I got rid of. There's no guys, there's no mask, it's just Alyssa as is. And you know, they like pry and try to dig deeper when it's like, I'm showing you, I'm like giving you all my cards right here, because I feel free as a person and I'm showing up as a free person, and you don't recognize that, and you don't understand that like there isn't more to that, you know. So I think that's another aspect that you kind of gotta look out for, especially if you are someone who has been centering men, and you know, maybe as you're working on yourself, you know, someone might come around, some male attention might come around, and it can kind of present itself like this when, and even in some instances, it's like they want to kind of like know the quote unquote mystery, the quote unquote secret about you, and it's like they just want to get in so they can have ammo, and they like shoot you down, you know. And to figure out what your insecurities are, there are like people who operate like this, not just men, but like literally people in general. They collect ammo and, you know, they load it up and they want to shoot you down and to bring you down a peg and to make you feel as insecure and small and uncertain and lacking identity as much as they feel, you know, as much as they feel that and won't confront that, you know, within themselves. They would rather create turmoil within you. So I think that's definitely something you have to watch out for as a young woman, you know, as you're coming into yourself. I'm still definitely coming into myself. I'm starting like therapy now, so I can kind of just like, I have a checklist for myself, for me. Like, I want therapy, I want this amount of money, I want to be here, like I want all my ducks in a row, so that when it's all aligned, there's literally nothing stopping me. I will be gone. Like, you don't even understand. Like, when I had my first opportunity to like get up and go to live in Rome for 2 years, I was gone within a matter of months. Like, it was no joke. Packed up all my stuff, went over there. I mean, I've always been like that, and I think I get a lot of that from my parents, because, you know, they're immigrants as well. I don't know if that's my nature or if that was how I was nurtured to be, but that's how I am. And I think it's also kind of made me more skeptical to a lot of the tactics of men, you know, because I mean, when you have like daddy issues, unfortunately, we got to use this term, but when you have daddy issues, like, you're gonna internalize it in like at least 2 different ways. There might be more different ways, people might be handling it differently, but you're gonna, at least from what I've seen, you're gonna internalize it 2 different ways. It's either you're gonna internalize your issues with your dad or even your mom, where it's like you're gonna constantly be seeking that validation in men, or it's like it's something that you can pass on because you've seen so much of the bullshit, not only within your own young life, but through the women in your life, the women who are your examples, you know. And you're kind of just like, I don't want anything to do with that. I feel like that's unnecessary. And I think that's kind of like the mindset that little Alyssa had. Like, I was just like, I'm not gonna go through that. And like, there's so much more to discuss out here. You know, some guys are great, but have you seen what they're doing in Canada? Like, no, I'm just kidding. I also like kind of thank God. I don't know where a lot of like these characteristics come from, but I thank God with the fact that, like, yeah, I have been lonely, but I've also been okay being alone. Like, does that make sense? Like, probably not, but everyone feels a bit out of place at times, you know, especially in like certain social circles and stuff, and it can be kind of lonely, especially like, you know, when you move to a different country and like even the Americans are giving you a tough time, but also kind of just like being alone with myself. I'm also okay with that, like going to the coffee shop by myself, going to the library by myself, going to the park by myself, spreading out a blanket and just taking in the sun and reading, and just doing the boring things that help you very subtly like cultivate peace and like fulfillment, and just bridging these huge gaps, you know, within you. Like I don't know how else to like explain the freedom that I've found, like, and I can't, and I how do I put this? It's freedom that I've discovered outside of decentering men, but like men were never the center of it. It was just kind of like, it was like a natural process of like stumbling into myself and who I am and who I want to be, and stumbling into the bad parts of me and the things that I'm still working on like getting rid of, and like just becoming more well-rounded and better person, and learning different languages and learning different ways to communicate and learning different ways to know how to love and to hear the things that people aren't saying so that I can best be there for them, and knowing how to get out of my head, you know, and to kind of just relax and be 22. I think there's a lot of societal pressure, not only from the common stereotypes that women have to face, but just in general right now, like when it comes to like making money and classism and where you should be by the time you're it's not even 25 anymore, whether you should be by the time you're like 20. Like if you're 20 and you don't have a house, your life's fucking over. I'm just like, we know it's not true, but there's like that anxiety that comes from this like lie. It's absolutely insane, and you really just have to tune yourself out, man. Well, not yeah, you got to tune yourself out, you got to tune other people out, sometimes you got to tune social media out for sure. There is a constant like balance and stability in my life, and it's like, and I figured this out especially like when I got over to Rome and, you know, I was interacting with people and building these relationships and stuff, and I'm like, I feel like if I didn't get married and had, you know, kids, I'd be okay. You know, if the next person I met and like it didn't work out, and then I found myself kind of just like alone, I would be okay. Marriage or not, I'm okay. Relationship or not, I'm okay. And then that spread into kind of like degree or not, I'm okay. Whether I get the apology or not, I'm okay. Whether I receive the love or not, I'm okay. Because that sense of stability and balance, it's coming from me and from within. And I think that's the point of all of this that a lot of women are missing, is like the whole point of this, like at least for navigating through this life, is that you need to be fucking okay regardless of whether it works out or not, whether the dream comes or not, whether what you're wanting comes or not, whether what you weren't expecting comes or not. You gotta be okay. You have to find that place within yourself where it's like, okay, that fell away. Which direction do I go into next? Where am I walking next? But it's a lot and it's a process. Being a healthy person is not easy, especially in this day and age. It's really not easy. So be kind to yourself and take your time and spend time with yourself. And you know, I'm not telling you to hate men. I don't think you should hate men. I'm telling you that you should go love yourself. I'm telling you that you should go befriend yourself. So that's all that I have for this video. I definitely think I want to make a part 2 to this, maybe dive a bit deeper, more into the decentering part and coming into femininity and coming into being a young woman, and sexism and ageism and all that jazz that I'm dealing with right now. But yeah, and maybe a video that's a bit more detached from Sex and the City, and it's just kind of just like the raw stuff. But thank you so much, you guys, for coming around to my channel and listening to what I have to say, my bullshit. And I will see you in another video.